Well, the design you see here calls for a row of vegetable beds running from the left across to the right at the back of a property. There's a deck with a pergola over, a couple of steps down to a sunken lawn, and then with some brick edging, some garden beds through here. So there are various vegetables. The vegetables are surrounded by some companion planting, but if we zoom in here and look at these vegetable beds, notice how if I line up with the top of the one on the left here, line my cursor up, can you see that as you track across, not all of the beds line up. So we can take advantage of the entity tools, the modify entity tools, to line things up. To do that, it's modify and align an object. These are rectangles, so I can select each rectangle that indicates the bed. I'm just working my way across. Once we've done that, I hit the enter key. Now I'm asked for the align mode, left, center, right or top. So in this case I want to line them up across the top. So T for top, and the base point will just pick the top left of the vegetable bed on the extreme left, and then they all now line up. To illustrate, let's draw a line from the end of this bed here all the way across to the end of the corresponding bed on the other end, and if we now exit from there and we just select that line that we've just drawn, we should see its angle have an angle of 0. So we now have those vegetable beds all lined up. It's a moderately trivial thing, but any entity like that can be lined up in that way. In contrast, if you want to line text up, you might, for the sake of argument, want this group of text in here lined up. We could go modify and align text. The prompt says pick the text to align, and there are a number of text entities. I hit enter, and again this time we would want a right entity, I think, and we'll say click here. Now all of them jump to the right. You might actually still prefer to manually move that one across. With polar on, you can easily move it horizontally. So to my mind, the lettering stands out much nicer. And if you want to fiddle a little, we could move the end of those lines out like so, and you probably, in the case here, I'd probably want to move that text up like so. So the text entities can be arranged and line them up, and similarly other entities, be they rectangles, be they circles, arcs or whatever, can all be lined up, and it just needs that in order to produce a neat layout. So there's our layout. We're now ready to print. We'd probably at this stage want to turn off the dimension layer here. You can do that in two ways. You could go to here and dimensions on a layer L dim, you could turn it off in that way, or what we could do is select the floating viewport here, and I need to zoom in because I've selected two entities. We look over here, one is a viewport and one is a rectangle, and I want to hold my shift key down and pick that rectangle and take it out. So now I have the floating viewport. If I now right click I can say Viewport layers, and I can turn off the dimension layer, and that will occur, but only in that very same layout view. I could then duplicate that layout view, and in the duplicated one I could turn on the dimension layer. So we're just modifying things, prettying things up, making things look a little neater by some of those techniques. And now I see, zooming in here, that I've moved that text in the wrong line. So I need to grab, and all that text does line up now, but I want it showing on the layout space, so I clearly need to move these across, and I almost certainly would need to move that line back. So I'm just illustrating that even though one is relatively experienced with gCADPlus, you can still make layout errors. So let's go back in, and we're still not there. We need to do a further adjustment of that text and move it again quite close in to the fence there. Let's now move to layout space, and now that works quite well, other than going back in and yet again moving these into position. All of the labelling and lettering here has been done with individual lines of text and an individual line leading the steps, the label to the steps here. I'd prefer to use a dimension style and label all those with leaders. And this is the leader option here. And if I wanted to label those steps, I'd actually put both pieces of text in the one leader line. So let's start by copying that, and then we'll go into our leader, and the arrowhead position will be here. We'll just follow, then we'll come down there and we'll knock that into position. You can see here that the dimension style text is not quite large enough for this purpose, but let me just change it. Dimension style will make our text height, so you can see it, we'll make it 200. And what I wanted to demonstrate was, once you put some labelling in a leader, you can move things around and adjust things very easily. If you wanted to have a bare line as the leader line, you could do that also by taking off the arrowhead in the dimension style setting. So we come in here to geometry, and arrowheads can be closed blank or none. We want none, and we'll OK it. And now if I drew a new line, a new leader, let's just do a dummy one from here down to there, put the same text in, and that didn't work. We've still got an arrowhead. So let's dimension style and leader. I actually want to go back, don't I? I picked the wrong setting. I say none. Now those arrowheads disappear. So we have a leader now where we can move things around really nicely. So some of the little tools that help you draft in a comfortable environment hopefully have been demonstrated.